Hello everybody, I'm very excited to be talking about cats in Kuching. Just wait for my slides. So I'm Gemma, I'm a vet from RSPCA New South Wales. I started my practice as a vet in shelter medicine. I've been working there for a very long time. I'm going to talk today about what we're doing for unowned cat management. So I'll start by talking a bit about definitions, because different terminology is used a lot with different people when talking about cats. So I'll just define what I will be using. So in Australia, we talk about feral cats as being different from domestic cats. They're all the same cats. If you caught a cat in a trap and it hissed at you and it didn't have a collar, there's literally no way you can tell whether it belongs to any of these different populations. But we talk about feral cats as being cats that are living as wild animals out in the bush. They have a really significant ecological impact in Australia. They have absolutely no contact with people. They're living completely independently as free-breeding wild animals. Domestic cats, on the other hand, have some sort of relationship with people. And these cats are all the same. The difference is purely in the human behaviour and especially how the humans see the relationship with the cat. So owned cats is fairly self-explanatory. The interesting ones are the semi-owned cats in the middle. So they can have the exact same sort of relationship with their human caregiver. They can be socialised or unsocialised, just as an owned cat can be. But the difference is, if you ask a semi-owner, do you have a cat? They're going to say, oh, no, I don't have a cat. If you ask a semi-owner, is that your cat that you're feeding? They'll say, oh, no, that's just a stray. So how they see themselves is the important distinction between a semi-owner and an owner, which is really important when we come to looking at their behaviour and how we can influence it. Unowned cats in Australia seem to be quite uncommon. These are cats who are indirectly dependent on people. So often we'll see these cats around rubbish tips, eating out of bins. People aren't feeding them directly. But what we find in practice is that they don't stay unowned for very long. It's not very long until someone notices them and starts to look after them. So in Australia, we have these 3 separate cat populations. I just put this up to kind of give you a sense of the proportion. So most of the cats in Australia are actually owned cats. Most of them are desexed, which is what we call neutering or surgical sterilisation in Australia. The feral cat population fluctuates up and down depending on environmental conditions. And then we've got this smaller population of unowned cats in the middle. But these are populations that interact with each other. So cats will move between populations within their lifetimes. They can freely interbreed and they're all related. So what's important is looking at where do these unowned cats come from. So there's 3 main places that the cats are coming from. They'll trickle in from the bush, attracted by food when they're hungry, especially in rural areas that are on the fringes of the bush. Number 2, cats will be abandoned, cats and kittens. Number 3, cats can migrate from different areas. So cats aren't going to respect the council boundaries. So how much migration you're getting from other areas is going to depend on what's happening in the neighbouring areas. So these first 3 reasons are always going to happen to some extent. And I think this is something that is not taken into account by a lot of local councils in Australia who are responsible for domestic companion animal management. If you don't get on top of those 3 things, you're going to end up with a free breeding population of unowned cats, which is number 4. So why are they important? For a few different reasons. One, those unowned cats are going to contribute to the feral population and contribute to issues of wildlife predation. Also, they create a nuisance. Often they have pretty poor welfare. The big one that is of interest to us as RSPCA, and the largest animal shelters in the Southern Hemisphere, is that they are the cats that are contributing to our shelter intake. So RSPCA New South Wales, we take in about 15,000 of these cats every year. These are overwhelmingly the cats contributing to our euthanasia. So the unsocialised cats that are really difficult to rehome, the neonates that are really resource intensive to rear. And the other third really important part of why these unknown cats are important is they're contributing to the owned cat population. So consistently, research in Australia shows that about half of the 5.5 million pet cats in Australia were passively acquired by people who didn't plan to become a cat owner. They got a cat for free just because a stray cat showed up on their doorstep. So we did a big social science study. We surveyed people from across our state in New South Wales. We're looking at cat containment behaviour mainly, but we also asked people, do you care for any other free-roaming cats who you don't own? So we had a look at the characteristics of these 588 semi-owners. So it was about 7% of the population that we surveyed and how they were different. So we found semi-owners were mainly women. They were disproportionately from lower socioeconomic areas. They were more likely to be renters, so living in more insecure housing. We also found most of the semi-owners have pet cats of their own as well, and they're more likely to have more cats of their own, so significantly more likely to have 3 or more cats. And they had some different behaviours and beliefs around cats and their management as well. So what does this all mean? Semi-owners are compassionate people who are noticing cats in their neighbourhood and trying to do something to help them. But ultimately, these are cats they're caring for who aren't their responsibility. And this is a really important consideration when we're trying to look at changing their behaviour. They have a different kind of relationship with these cats. They're often already overwhelmed with their caregiving responsibilities for their cats. And they have a whole bunch more barriers to engaging with the responsible ownership behaviours than other people. They have limited resources. Finances is often a huge issue. So just trying to give you a couple of examples of what this looks like in practice. So we've got probably a dozen programs across the state in all sorts of different types of settings, in the city, out in the bush, in remote areas on the coast. And we see these same scenarios play out time and time again. I suspect it's probably the same everywhere. So David came to Australia as a refugee about 20 years ago. He's in his 70s. He has terminal cancer. He's living in government housing. He's pretty socially isolated. 15 years ago, he had one stray cat show up on his doorstep and he started to feed her. And pretty quickly, that's turned into a population that's relatively stable, about 30 to 50 cats. He's had this really ongoing antagonistic relationship with the council who've come and tried to trap them and kill them at various points. It's never worked. The situation has stayed the same. So we're working with David. It took a while for him to talk to us, but once he was confident that we weren't going to hurt the cats and he wasn't going to get in trouble, he was actually really grateful and really keen to work with us. But again, the same thing, when we asked him, do you have any cats? He'd be like, oh, no, I don't have any cats, even though this was his doorstep. Oh, okay. Do you know who looks after these cats on your doorstep? Oh, I don't know. But when we say, we'd like to help the cats, so if there's someone who's looking after them, we can de-sex them for free, we'll pick them up, we'll bring them back, we'll microchip them, we just want to help. And he was so grateful and very willing to put his name on those cats to look after them. Very common scenario, the overwhelmed caregiver. So what we found, so this is behind David's house, there's a pizza shop, and you can see the cats on the roof of the pizza shop. We discovered the pizza shop were chucking out their scraps every night for the cats as well. So often this is the case. So you've got a colony, you've got one primary carer, but you've got a whole bunch of other semi-owners as well, often people who are feeding the cats at their workplace. And then this is the next street over. So this is Shirley. She's on a disability pension. She's also living in a one-bedroom government housing unit. And this is her with her cat Princess. 11 years old, D-sex, microchip registered. She was an indoor-only cat. And then about 6 months ago, these two showed up in the middle as little kittens, probably about 6 weeks old. And Shirley started to care for those kittens. She'd actually reached out to the council to report them as stray cats and asked them to pick them up. Council said, sorry, we can't help. She also reached out to our RSPCA shelter and we said, sorry, we can't take them because we're full, as we often are, in kitten season. So she kept feeding them. We did eventually de-sex these cats through our program and she's kept them. So now she has 3 cats. But you can see how now it's become a whole lot more difficult for her to keep her cats contained to her house. Princess doesn't like Sugar and Spice, who they're now called. Sugar and Spice are only semi-socialised. They're getting better, but they still don't want to be inside all the time. They don't want to be patted. And also, because of her mobility issues, Shirley finds it really difficult to clean litter trays all the time. She was managing when it was just 1 cat, but now that it's 3, it's a whole different ballpark. So this is a really good situation, an example of how this can very easily become the same situation as David's. If you don't de-sex those 2 female cats and you leave it a year, you've probably got 20, 30 cats there. And it's a very different situation to manage. So this is where our stray care programs come in. We do free de-sexing for stray cats. They're quite targeted. We've got programs all over the state. The objective is to humanely reduce cat overpopulation, and it's all about human behaviour change. So we're trying to change the behaviour of these semi-owners, and we're keeping it really simple. The target behaviour is just reporting the cat to get it de-sexed. The second target behaviour is trying to get these semi-owners to commit to the ongoing care of the cat, so becoming that cat's caregiver officially. Usually that doesn't actually require them to change what they're doing. It's just this switch, a mental switch that says, okay, this is my cat. I'm going to take care of it. I'm responsible for it if something happens. So that's a really important thing, because if you're putting up ads to say we've got free cat de-sexing, semi-owners are not going to engage because in their mind the cat is not their cat. So the first thing we want to do is say, do you have stray cats where you live? Give us a call. We want to help the cats. So I won't talk too much about this. We've published a paper that spells this all out in detail. But basically we like to base our programs on data, especially shelter intake data, council nuisance complaint data. We get all the stakeholders involved, we make a long-term plan and we try and remove all the barriers so we can get all these cats de-sexed. The idea being that we're going to reduce the unowned cat population, stop the cats coming into the shelters, keep them in the community, just stop them breeding, and try and move those unowned cats into the owned population by creating that human behaviour change. So this is de-sexing in action in our hospital at Sydney. And the keys here, it's all about community engagement. I put this up just to show you an idea of the number of people that are involved in one program. So we try and get all the council rangers on board. They have a really key connection with the community. They often know where all the problem spots are. They know where the Davids are. They usually have a relationship with them. What we find, the people like Shirley are the low-hanging fruit. They're the people who actually call you and say, I've got this stray kitten. So if you can get them while it's just 1 or 2, it's much easier. The people like David are the harder ones that you tend to end up with. And we find they really need a case management type approach. So in the middle, that there is Jade with the 2 dogs, who's our de-sexing coordinator. And she really holds these people's hands as they go through this whole process, checks in with them once a week, makes sure that they can get help trapping and transporting the cats if they need to, keeps checking in with them, and can also be really valuable with connecting these people with the social supports they need as well. Because often these are people who are completely socially isolated. They often have really fractured relationships with their support networks because of the cat situation they're in. And just helping them with the cats can make a huge difference for their well-being as well. The other key ingredient is the local vets. If you don't have capacity to actually sterilise the cats, then you can't do this. And that requires a whole different skill set for the vets often as well. Sterilising unsocialised cats is a whole different skill set in itself, and lots of vets aren't necessarily familiar with it. Handling safely the cats, doing the anaesthetic protocols, these sorts of things. So we do a lot of work with the vets to build their capacity, build their confidence. Often they need a bit of help with knowing how to interact with the cat caregivers as well, because they're a different cohort of people as well, often quite different to their regular clientele. And a big thing is follow-up. So we need to keep checking back in with these people, because often when you've got a situation like David's, an established colony, people will dump their kittens there, people will abandon cats there. So this is not a one and done situation. You've got to keep going back and keep checking in. So we've published a couple of studies based on our social science research, which you can download online. And that's my contact details if anyone's interested in getting in touch. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you again, Dr. Gemma, for your talk on effective free-roaming cat management. We will now open for Q&A session for Dr. Gemma.
I need the microphone, can I shout?
Okay.
You seem to describe a lot of potential hoarding situations with like David and Shirley, which is not always their fault, they don't get support from council, or sometimes you guys are full. Do you work with local mental health charities maybe to add like sort of support on that? Is that something that you feel would help the situation, apart from helping with the cats, but helping with people as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of these situations that we come across are not true hoarding situations. They are just overwhelmed caregivers, but they do have, 30 to 50 cats. So we do come across the true hoarding situations as well, and they can be really difficult to work with because often they don't want the help and they won't talk to you. So usually they're the last ones you're dealing with. And yes, absolutely, we try and hook them up with the support. We've got a community services program within RSPCA as well that can help with case management and connections with other services. But yeah, they're the really difficult ones. Yeah. It's been really interesting, actually. We've got a huge veterinary workforce shortage in Australia, which I'm sure is similar in lots of different places, but that's really changed things in that vets just don't have the capacity to do much work, and they're actually quite grateful for other people to do it for you. So finding vets to do the services has been difficult. We have to pay more for the services, but in general, they're quite happy to do the cat desexing because they're easy surgeries. They're relatively, they enjoy doing them, but we're finding we have to pay more for the services so they can fit them in.
All right, are there any more questions for Dr. Gemma?
Do you also have any trap, neuter, release programs?
Trap, neuter, release is a really dirty word in Australia. The cat world in Australia is very divided, and the ecologists and conservation people will not allow anything close to TNR to happen. It's also technically illegal with our legislation. People can be prosecuted for abandonment of cats. So I guess what we are doing is modelled on TNR. With the big focus on the human behaviour change, and with the caveat that every cat that participates in the program has to have someone who is designated as their caregiver, their owner, which is actually, I think, a really important part of an effective program and a long-term human behaviour change solution. We actually want people to take responsibility for these cats. It's basically TNR plus human behaviour change. Yeah, cats are allowed to free roam in some parts of Australia. Yeah. So yes, they can be in his neighbourhood and that's fine.
Okay, now we will thank you again, Dr. Gemma.
Thank
and now
you.
we will now move on to the next session,